This amount doesn't seem appropriate for someone like you." Those words. Sharp. Arrogant. Laced with venom. And just like that, every eye in the lobby turned. Every whisper stopped. Every assumption was confirmed. The polished marble floor of Meridian Financial's flagship branch suddenly felt cold beneath Angela Freeman's feet. And yet, she stood tall. 37 minutes. That's how long she'd been waiting, while 3 white customers who came after her were welcomed, served, and seen. Angela. She was invisible. Until she dared to withdraw her own money, $115,000 to be exact. That's when she became suspicious. That's when she became a problem. That's when the branch manager decided to humiliate her. And the most disturbing part? This wasn't a rogue incident. It was a pattern. A culture. A system, rotten from the inside out. Angela, dressed simply in a navy hoodie, dark slacks, and a face cap, didn't look like a CEO. That's why no one at the bank that morning treated her like one. The teller's eyes had darted between Angela's license and her face, as if searching for proof of fraud in her skin tone. The senior teller stood over her like a security guard, and another employee smirked openly, whispering, probably one of those money laundering cases. Then came Jessica Keller, the branch manager. Immaculately dressed, exuding power, but not earned power. Inherited privilege, maybe. She didn't introduce herself. She didn't ask Angela's name. She just took control, as if it were her birthright. Her voice, syrupy with false professionalism, carried across the entire lobby as she declared. "We have a certain class of customers here at Meridian, and unfortunately, we can't serve you." Not won't. Can't. A sentence soaked in centuries of systemic exclusion. Angela's heart pounded, but not from fear. From rage. The quiet kind. The calculated kind. The kind that had been passed down from grandmother to mother to daughter, the rage of always having to be twice as good for half the respect. Still, she didn't flinch. Instead, she calmly replied, "I'd like to speak to someone who can actually help me complete this transaction." Jessica's smile twitched, then vanished. "Ma'am, I am the highest authority in this branch." She leaned in closer, her expensive perfume almost suffocating, her voice lowered to a whisper dripping in malice. "Maybe you'd be more comfortable at the check cashing place down the street. They're more accustomed to your type." The room gasped. Some staff looked away, pretending not to hear. A white woman clutched her purse tighter. A man in a suit smirked and turned away. "Angela." She stared directly at the security camera. Because what no one knew was this. Angela Freeman was not just a customer. She was the CEO of Meridian Financial. And she had walked into that branch deliberately, dressed modestly, to see if the rumors were true, rumors of racial bias, unequal treatment, and a culture that quietly drove black and brown customers away. She hadn't come for cash. She had come for truth. And now she had it. In high definition, from multiple angles, captured on every camera. At 10:17 a.m., she made a phone call. "Diane? It's Angela Freeman. I need you at the downtown branch. Now." What followed would become one of the most public, explosive reckonings in the history of American banking. It would be shown in leadership seminars, taught in business ethics classes, and cited in lawsuits. But in this moment, before the firings, before the press conference, before the nationwide headlines, Angela Freeman stood alone. Surrounded. Dismissed. Disrespected. And yet, undefeated. Because she knew something Jessica Keller didn't. Power doesn't always walk in wearing a suit. Sometimes it walks in quietly, waits patiently. And changes everything. Before the scandal that brought an entire institution to its knees, before the headlines, before the silence that fell over the marble lobby like a sudden winter, there was another woman behind the counter. She wore a simple navy skirt suit, her shoes slightly scuffed from years of careful use. Her name tag read Angela Freeman, teller trainee. She smiled often, not because she always wanted to, but because she had to. It was the kind of smile women of color learn to wear early, soft enough to diffuse discomfort, firm enough to demand dignity. That was 25 years ago. Back then, the lobby of Meridian Financial's downtown branch looked almost identical to the way it did the day she returned undercover: marble floors, arched windows, and the illusion of inclusivity printed on glossy brochures. But beneath the surface, nothing was the same. Angela hadn't come from money. Her parents were high school teachers in Jackson, Mississippi. They taught her algebra and accountability at the same kitchen table. Her mother wore church hats with pride, and her father quoted Baldwin and buried his pain in his garden. They didn't have much, but they taught her the priceless truth: where you start is a detail. Where you finish is your legacy. Angela entered the workforce at 22, no fancy connections, no legacy admissions. Just a bachelor's degree in business from Jackson State and a heart full of fight. She applied to Meridian Financial on a whim. The job description didn't mention much more than counting cash and handling deposits, but something about the name, Meridian, felt like a promise. A crossing point. A beginning. What she didn't expect was how many times she'd be told she didn't belong. The first time came 3 weeks into her training. A white customer refused to be helped by the new girl. Said he'd wait for someone more experienced. Angela was shaken but not surprised. Her manager at the time, a man named Terry with tired eyes and the permanent smell of stale coffee on his breath, said nothing. Just sighed and handed the customer off to someone else. Later, he pulled Angela aside and said, "Don't take it personal. Some people just feel more comfortable with familiarity." Angela learned early that familiar in banking meant white, male, and wealthy. And she was none of those. But she also learned something else: numbers don't lie. People might try to discredit your presence, but they can't discredit your performance. So she focused. She worked through lunch breaks, volunteered for the shifts no one wanted, memorized the bank's operating manual cover to cover. She became the go-to for troubleshooting, balancing, resolving customer disputes. When she was promoted to loan officer after just 14 months, an unheard of pace, her colleagues muttered about diversity hires. Angela ignored them. She let her spreadsheet speak for her. In 1 year, her department saw a 27% increase in loan approvals and a 12% drop in default rates. Clients requested her by name. The promotions followed, slowly at first, then all at once. Assistant branch manager. Branch manager. Regional director. Each title came with more scrutiny, more veiled comments about her tone, her hair, her leadership style. One executive once said during a performance review, "You're brilliant, Angela, but sometimes your confidence can come off sharp." She asked him if he'd ever said that to a male executive. He looked away. At night, she studied. First online classes, then Harvard Business School. Her MBA was earned in midnight hours and red-eye flights, funded by scholarships and second jobs. No one handed Angela anything. Every inch of progress was carved out with grace and grit. By the time she entered the C-suite as Chief Operations Officer, Angela had already transformed 5 failing branches, turned around 2 regions, and launched an internal audit system that increased operational efficiency by 19%. Her name was whispered in boardrooms and shouted in hallway gossip. Freeman's numbers are unbeatable. Freeman's staff don't leave. Freeman doesn't play politics. And that was the problem. Angela didn't play politics, she played fair. In an environment where power often depended on alliances built on whispers and golf games, she stood apart. Some admired it. Others feared it. And many resented it. When the previous CEO announced his retirement, Angela was the obvious choice on paper: 25 years of service, multiple turnarounds, national recognition, a spotless record. But behind closed doors, concerns surfaced. Not about her experience. About her face. "What will our high-value clients think?" one board member asked, eyes sliding sideways as if the room would nod with him. Another worried she was too focused on community banking, as if wanting fairness for all customers was a liability. Angela never heard these comments directly, but she knew. Black women in corporate America often sense what isn't said louder than what is. She had learned to read the pauses between compliments, the way praise came with asterisks, the way excellence was always surprising when it came from someone like her. Still, when the vote came, she won. Narrowly. And in her first speech as CEO, she didn't gloat. She didn't grandstand. She stood in a navy blazer, her voice clear and unwavering. "I will ensure that every client, every employee, and every community we serve experiences the same level of respect and excellence." No exceptions. They were clapping in the room. But some were waiting for her to fail. Angela didn't care. Instead of celebrating, she got to work. Within months, she noticed what no one else had bothered to question: the data. Beneath the surface of clean quarterly reports and shiny marketing campaigns, she saw fractures. Complaint logs that didn't match satisfaction surveys. Branches where minority customers were closing accounts at 3 times the normal rate. Offices that posted stellar numbers, but had 0 black managers. And then she saw the downtown branch. The same branch where she'd once started. Where she'd been overlooked, undervalued, underestimated. Where the lobby hadn't changed, but the problem had festered. Jessica Keller ran that branch, now a 15-year veteran, polished resume, high-performance scores. But the patterns told another story. People of color denied services at higher rates. Large withdrawals delayed or questioned. Minor complaints brushed aside. The same story, over and over again. Angela knew she couldn't rely on reports. She needed truth. Raw, unfiltered, unmasked. So she dusted off an old name tag. Wore sneakers instead of heels. Chose a hoodie over a blazer. And walked in. Not as the CEO. But as the woman who had once been told she didn't belong. The morning Angela Freeman decided to walk into her own bank unrecognized, the city was still shaking off the cold edge of dawn. The sidewalks glistened from a late-night drizzle. Street vendors were just setting up. Pigeons scattered from the granite steps of Meridian Financial's towering flagship branch as Angela approached, her pace calm, deliberate, like a woman with no particular power and nowhere special to be. She wore dark slacks, a navy blue hoodie, and comfortable sneakers. Her natural curls were tucked beneath a simple cap, and her face, unadorned by makeup, revealed only fatigue and intention. Her purse, modest and worn at the corners, hung off her shoulder. She looked like any ordinary middle-class woman, maybe someone stopping by after dropping her kids off at school or before heading to a second shift. And that was the point. She wasn't here as the CEO of a billion-dollar institution. Not this morning. This morning, she was a test. Angela had been CEO for 3 months. In that time, she'd reviewed dozens of glowing reports from her leadership team. Customer satisfaction. Excellent. Complaint resolution. Timely. Branch performance. Trending upward. But Angela had also spent the last 25 years learning the difference between numbers and reality. And reality, she knew, often hid in plain sight. It started with an anonymous email from a former employee. They smile for the auditors, but sneer at the clients. Especially black ones. Then came the flagged data in her internal audit. The downtown branch had the highest number of minority client closures across the entire company, and the lowest complaint rates. A paradox. Until you understood what it meant. It meant people weren't complaining. They were just walking away. Quietly. Silently. So Angela decided to stop reading about the branch. She would walk into it. It was 9:15 a.m. when she stepped through the revolving doors. The space hadn't changed in 2 decades, marble flooring, high ceilings, brass accents, and the quiet hum of affluence. A wall-mounted television played muted financial news while a scrolling digital display boasted the bank's mission, building financial success together, with trust, respect, and integrity. Angela sat down on the cushioned waiting bench, pulled out her phone, and waited. But she wasn't looking at messages. She was watching. Recording, in her mind, everything that happened around her. The first interaction came quickly. A white businessman in a tailored Armani suit approached the desk. Before he could open his mouth, a customer service rep stood up, smiling, "Good morning, sir. Can I help you today?" The man was led past the line, straight to an available desk. No ID check. No waiting. Angela made a mental note. Time, 9:18. Next came an elderly Asian couple. They approached timidly, hands clasped, and asked where to go. The same rep pointed without words toward the number kiosk. No eye contact. No smile. Angela watched their faces fall as they sat down beside her. Time, 9:21. A young white woman in jeans and a puffer coat arrived minutes later. She was greeted warmly. The teller asked about her weekend. They laughed. Her transaction took less than 2 minutes. Then came a Hispanic man in janitor's overalls. The smile disappeared. His ID was scanned twice. He was asked to wait while a second teller verified his check. Angela took another note. It wasn't about policy. It was about perception. She watched this pattern play out 6 more times before her number was finally called, 37 minutes after her arrival, despite the lobby being only moderately busy. When she stepped up to the counter, the teller's demeanor changed instantly. "How can I help you?" The voice was flat, hesitant. "I'd like to make a withdrawal, please." Angela slid over her ID and a slip with the amount, $115,000. The teller's eyes widened. She glanced between the ID and Angela's face several times, her expression skeptical. "That's a large amount," she said slowly, loud enough for the teller next to her, Mark, to overhear. He immediately stood up, walking over to loom behind the counter. "Is there a problem here?" he asked loudly. Heads turned. Conversations hushed. "No problem," Angela said calmly. "Just a withdrawal." Mark picked up her ID and studied it, as if he'd never seen one before. "We've been seeing unusual activity on these types of accounts," he said, stressing these types. Angela didn't respond. Her stillness, as always, was her sharpest weapon. "Beth," the teller, typed nervously. Mark whispered to another teller, Richard, who snuck a quick glance at Angela and chuckled. He whispered something back, not quite quietly enough, "Money laundering. Or settlement money. Maybe both." Angela heard every word. She breathed deeply through her nose. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but from something deeper. Recognition. She had been here before. Maybe not in this exact moment, but in hundreds like it. And every black professional in America knew what this was. It wasn't a security protocol. It was a performance. Richard stepped forward with a smirk. "Just need to verify the funds are actually yours," he said with faux sweetness. "You understand, right? It's for your protection." Angela leaned slightly forward. Her voice cool, unwavering. "I've provided full identification. I'd like to proceed." That's when Jessica Keller arrived. The branch manager. Tall. Sharp suit. Smug confidence. I understand there's confusion about a large withdrawal, she asked, eyes narrowing. No confusion, Angela replied. Just trying to access my money. Jessica didn't flinch. May I ask what the money's for? Her tone was professional, too professional. That corporate sharpness that disguised poison with polish. Angela stared at her. Would you like me to call someone who can actually help me? Jessica smiled thinly. Ma'am, I'm the highest authority in this branch. Her voice dropped to a theatrical whisper. Perhaps a check cashing place would be better equipped for your type of banking needs. That was it. The mask had slipped. And Angela had everything she needed. She reached into her purse. Pulled out her phone. Dialed. Yes, this is Angela Freeman. Downtown branch. I need Diane. Now. Richard scoffed. Angela Freeman, he whispered mockingly, mimicking her posture. Mark snorted. Beth looked like she might cry. Jessica's smile wavered, just slightly. But Angela didn't flinch. Her voice was steady. Yes. They've denied the withdrawal. Yes. They've questioned the legitimacy. Yes. I'm recording. Jessica's tone sharpened. You're creating a disturbance. I'll have to call security. Angela looked her in the eyes. Do what you need to do. Security was summoned. Thomas, barely 25 and fresh out of training, looked frozen. He didn't want to touch this. Jessica turned to the room, her voice loud, calculated. We reserve the right to refuse service to anyone attempting fraud. Fraud. With no evidence. No basis. No facts. Just a stereotype. The branch had gone silent. Customers watched. Some with pity. Others with judgment. Angela didn't argue. She recorded. Everything. Beth avoided eye contact. Mark crossed his arms. Richard grinned. Jessica leaned in again. People like you always try to game the system. Angela didn't blink. Behind her, the elevator chimed. And then, everything changed. The branch's marble lobby had never been quieter. The crisp white light from the overhead fixtures seemed colder now, almost sterile, as if the building itself was holding its breath. Angela Freeman stood motionless at the counter, phone to her ear, her tone unwavering, her expression unreadable. Across from her, Jessica Keller, the branch manager with 15 years of glowing reviews and unchallenged authority, was beginning to feel something she had not experienced in years, doubt. And not just about Angela. About herself. About everything. Angela's voice was calm, but sharp enough to cut glass. Yes, Diane, I'm at the downtown flagship branch. No, they're refusing the withdrawal. Yes. That's correct. I've presented all ID, account documentation, and they've escalated to security. She paused, listening. Then quietly, I'll remain here until you arrive. Jessica stiffened. Who exactly are you calling? She demanded, arms crossed, her authority wobbling like a vase on a cracking shelf. Angela didn't answer. She slipped the phone back into her purse, still perfectly composed. Jessica's jaw tensed. Ma'am, I'm giving you a final warning. If you do not leave this branch voluntarily, I will have you escorted out by security. Her words echoed across the marble, louder than necessary, meant to re-establish control. But the crowd wasn't reacting the way she expected. They weren't supporting her. They were staring at her. Judging her. Recording her. Richard and Mark, the two tellers who had mocked Angela and propped up Jessica's thin veneer of superiority, still smirked, but the confidence had slipped from their eyes. They could even sense the air shifting. Beth, The young teller who'd first served Angela was now visibly trembling behind the counter. Her hands shook as she stacked deposit slips that didn't need arranging. She looked as if she might bolt from her station at any moment. Jessica motioned toward Thomas, the security guard. "Escort this woman out." Thomas hesitated. Angela looked at him, and only him. "Sir," she said respectfully, "I am a long-time customer of this bank. I've broken no rules. I've made no disturbance. I am simply trying to access funds in my account. You can check my identification. You'll find everything in order." The young man blinked. For a moment, he didn't know who to believe, his boss, who had summoned him like a blunt instrument, or this woman, calm, factual, composed, who spoke as if she were in control. Jessica snapped. "This is a private business. We have the right to refuse service to anyone. And this customer is exhibiting behavior consistent with fraud." That word again. Fraud. So casually spoken. So loaded with centuries of assumptions. So sharp, it could slice a reputation in two with a single utterance. The weight of it pressed into the room like smog. A white mother with 2 children standing at the next teller window pulled her kids closer. An elderly black man in a postal worker uniform shook his head sadly. He'd seen this scene before. But he'd never seen it end like this. Angela glanced up at the corner of the ceiling. The red light on the security camera was blinking steadily. Recording. Witnessing. She turned back to Jessica. "You've made your position clear," she said softly. And then, the doors opened. 2 large wooden doors swung open at the far end of the lobby with a force that made them slam against the wall, making every customer in the room jump. Even the security guard took a step back instinctively. Diane Porter had arrived. If Angela was calm water, Diane was a storm channeled into human form. She walked through the marble lobby like a prosecutor entering court. Her heels clicked sharply with each stride, echoing with purpose. Dressed in a perfectly tailored navy suit, she carried no briefcase, no folder, just a tablet in one hand and wrath in the other. Her eyes locked on Jessica from halfway across the lobby. The branch manager, who moments ago had been invoking her authority like a shield, now looked like a child caught red-handed. "Stop this. Immediately." Diane's voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was absolute. The room froze. Jessica blinked. "Ms. Porter. I wasn't expecting, what a surprise." Diane didn't stop walking. "Do you know who this is?" she asked, pointing to Angela. Jessica glanced back at Angela, confused. I'm sorry, I don't." "This," Diane said, voice rising just a touch, "is Angela Freeman. Your CEO." The words hit the room like a detonation. Gasps. Audible gasps. Even the scrolling stock ticker above the TV seemed to pause in respect. Jessica stepped back as if she'd been slapped. Richard's smirk vanished. Mark went pale. Beth covered her mouth. Thomas, the security guard, took one giant step backward and turned a shade of red that belonged in a fire alarm. Angela didn't move. She didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She simply stood. Still. Watching. Now they saw her. Diane turned to the employees, her voice slicing through the silence. "We've been watching the security feed. We've heard every word. We've seen how you've treated Mrs. Freeman. We've seen how you treat others." She held up the tablet. The screen showed split footage, a white customer withdrawing $90,000 with a handshake and a smile, and Angela, facing suspicion, interrogation, mockery. Jessica opened her mouth to defend herself. "There's a policy." "Save it," Diane snapped. "You processed 3 large withdrawals this morning. One man walked out with $150,000 in under 10 minutes. No ID scans. No second teller. No security call. You followed no policy, except discrimination. Jessica's lips quivered. This is a misunderstanding. Diane didn't flinch. This is a pattern. Then she turned to Richard and Mark. And you too? Laughing? Whispering about laundering. You think this is funny? Mark tried to explain. It was just, she looked like. She looked like what? Diane demanded. Say it. Mark fell silent. Richard stepped forward, suddenly desperate. I was just following Jessica's lead. No, you were enjoying it, Diane said flatly. Behind them, the elevator pinged again. This time, 3 people walked out, board members. Jonathan Prescott. Catherine Reynolds. Dennis Whitehill. Their tailored suits didn't hide the fire in their eyes. They didn't need to say a word. Their presence said everything. This was no longer a personnel issue. It was a reputational crisis. And everyone in the room knew it. Angela finally stepped forward. Her first word since Diane had entered. Jessica. Richard. Mark, she said, looking each of them in the eye. You are terminated. Effective immediately. No shouting. No drama. Just power. Clean and undeniable. Jessica looked like she might collapse. You can't. Angela raised her hand. I can. I have. And I just did. She turned to the security guard. Thomas. Please escort these former employees to collect their belongings and leave the premises. The young man nodded, now standing a little taller. Yes, ma'am. Jessica opened her mouth again, but no one was listening anymore. Richard was already backing away. Mark followed. Their careers unraveling in slow motion. The other customers stood frozen, many still recording on their phones. Angela turned to Beth, the young teller. I saw your hesitation. I saw your discomfort. You're not blameless, but you didn't join in. That matters. Beth looked stunned. I'm sorry. I didn't know what to do. Angela nodded. Now you will. She paused. Effective immediately, you're being promoted to interim branch manager. Another gasp. Beth's eyes filled with tears. But I'm just. You're someone who recognized wrong, Angela said, and wanted to do right. The lobby buzzed with energy, not celebration, not quite, but something close to healing. Angela turned back to the customers, to the staff still standing in shock. This isn't just about bad employees, she said. This is about a broken culture. And we're going to fix it. The marble lobby had witnessed many things in its polished silence: million-dollar deals, quiet tears over denied loans, whispered hopes of first-time homebuyers. But never, never, had it seen justice walk in wearing heels and a navy suit, or heard the calm voice of power strip titles away like peeling wallpaper. Angela Freeman stood at the center of it all, the storm now past but its consequences still reverberating through the high ceilings. She watched as Thomas, the security guard, gently escorted Jessica, Richard, and Mark away. No handcuffs. No outbursts. Just 3 broken careers wrapped in cardboard boxes and shame. Silence followed them like a shadow. No one clapped. No one cheered. That wasn't what this was. This was a funeral for arrogance, for systemic rot, for every smirk and shrug that had gone unchallenged for too long. Angela turned to the remaining staff, most of whom had flattened themselves behind counters, frozen in place. Some looked down. Some looked away. And a few, those who had smiled at Richard's jokes or nodded at Jessica's insinuations, were now sweating beneath starched collars. But one stood apart. Beth. The young teller who'd first assisted Angela, who had fumbled her keyboard, looked away in discomfort, but had not joined in. Beth stood trembling now, caught in the spotlight of accountability. Her face was pale, but her eyes held something that hadn't been there before: resolve. Angela walked toward her. Not fast. Not intimidating. Just steady, like someone who had carried the burden of being underestimated for decades and now had no weight left to fear. Beth tried to speak first. I didn't know what to do, she began, voice thin and cracking. Angela raised a hand gently, stopping her. You froze, she said. But you didn't mock. You didn't laugh. And I saw you flinch when they did. Beth swallowed hard. Angela continued, you didn't stop it. But you felt it. And that matters. Beth's eyes brimmed with tears. I should have said something. I should have told Jessica it was wrong. Angela nodded. Yes. You should have. Silence. Then she added, but this isn't about perfection. It's about who's willing to change. The staff, still gathered, leaned in as if hearing a sermon disguised as conversation. Angela took a breath. Beth, she said softly but clearly, effective immediately, you are promoted to interim branch manager. Gasps rippled through the room like wind through leaves. Beth froze. But, I'm just a teller. I've only been here 18 months. I've never led anyone. Angela tilted her head. You think I walked into my first management role knowing how to lead? Beth blinked. But I was part of the problem. Angela offered a faint smile. No. You were part of the system. There's a difference. And now, you'll be part of the solution. Beth stood, her body trembling, but her chin slowly rising. Angela turned to the rest of the staff. What happened here today isn't just about 3 employees making poor decisions, she said, voice rising just enough to carry across the echoing lobby. It's about a culture that told them those decisions were acceptable. She paced slightly, not in anger, but in command. And that culture ends now. Her words landed like a stone on glass. You've all seen the signs posted in every branch. Respect. Integrity. Equity. You've recited them at morning meetings. You've handed out flyers with those words. But you don't live them. She stopped and looked each staff member in the eye. And from this moment forward, you will. No one dared respond. Angela's voice softened, but did not lose its edge. I'm not here to burn this place down, she said. I'm here to build. She pointed to the mission statement still displayed in brass letters behind the teller counter. Building financial success together, with trust, respect, and integrity. That's not a slogan, Angela said. That's your contract with every person who walks through those doors. Whether they wear a $1,000 suit or a janitor's uniform. Whether their skin is light or dark. Whether they speak fluent English or not at all. She paused, letting the words land. From now on, every interaction will reflect those values. Every single one. Beth, still processing her new title, whispered, how will I lead? How will I even know what to do? Angela turned back to her. You'll be trained. You'll be mentored. But more importantly, she placed a hand on Beth's shoulder, you'll lead from experience. From what you felt today. From the discomfort that tells you something isn't right. Beth nodded, small at first, then firmer. The weight of fear hadn't left her, but now it sat beside something stronger, purpose. Angela continued, this time addressing customers still gathered in the lobby. To those who watched this unfold, she said, I'm sorry. The apology was simple. Honest. You should never have witnessed what you did. But I'm also glad you saw it. Because now, there's no denying what needs to change. She stepped back, raising her phone once more, not to call, not to threaten. To record. She faced the staff and turned the screen toward herself. "This," she said, "is what change looks like. And if you're part of this team, you're going to be part of that change." She pressed record and spoke directly into the camera. "My name is Angela Freeman. I'm the CEO of Meridian Financial. And today, I witnessed something that has been whispered about, dismissed, and ignored for far too long." She didn't blink. "But today, it ended. And tomorrow, a new culture begins." She stopped recording. Then turned to Diane Porter, who had remained silent, watching with quiet admiration. Diane nodded. "The board is with you." Angela raised an eyebrow. "Are they?" Diane smiled. "They're terrified. But they're with you." A beat of silence. Then both women laughed. It was the first sound of warmth since the confrontation began. Angela turned to the staff once more. "I'm giving you something rare," she said. "A clean slate. But that slate will be watched." She gestured to the cameras. "To ensure that no customer is ever treated as happened here today. Because the next time, there won't be warnings. There will only be consequences." She glanced at the wall clock. 11:12 a.m. Less than 2 hours since she'd walked into the branch as a nobody. Now, she stood as a symbol, not of revenge, but of reform. "Go back to work," Angela said finally. "But do it differently. Or don't do it at all." And with that, she walked out of the branch. No security detail. No entourage. Just dignity in her step, and a plan already forming in her mind. 3 days after the scandal at the downtown branch, Angela Freeman stood behind a podium draped with the Meridian Financial logo. Her posture was regal, composed, yet underneath the tailored suit and subtle pearls was a fire that no media lens could quite capture. This wasn't just a press conference. It was a reckoning. A reckoning not for personal vengeance, but for institutional resurrection. Behind her stood the full board of directors, their expressions tight, sober. They hadn't planned on being here, not like this. 3 days earlier, some of them had privately questioned the optics of a black woman as CEO. Now, they flanked her like sentinels, visibly humbled by the public failure of the company they had once thought immune to such disgrace. The audience was a mosaic of cameras, journalists, shareholders, and quietly watching customers whose eyes said what their mouths could not: "Don't just talk. Prove it." Angela stepped forward and looked into the crowd, not over their heads, not through them, but into them. "When people say systemic discrimination isn't real," she began, "they mean they've never been denied what they rightfully earned. They've never been questioned in places where they belonged. They've never stood in line, and felt invisible." The room stilled. You could hear jackets rustle, pens pause. 3 days ago, she continued, "I walked into a branch of the institution I lead, and I was treated like I didn't belong. I was judged not by my name, my title, or my track record, but by my appearance, my tone, my skin." Her voice didn't shake. But the weight of truth did. "And if that can happen to me, the CEO, imagine what happens to those without power, without title, every single day." There was a ripple across the room. The kind that doesn't make sound, but shifts something in people. Angela turned slightly, and with a nod, signaled a staff member to reveal the initiative's full name on a screen behind her. The Meridian Equity Reform Initiative, $50 million toward dignity, trust, and accountability. A hush fell as the number hit the screen. $50 million. Real money. Real commitment. Not just a PR stunt. Not this time. This initiative, Angela said, is not a donation. It's not a payout. It's an investment, in the people we serve, in the employees we train, and in the culture we must rebuild. She let the words settle, then raised her hand to count them off. First, we are instituting mandatory anti-bias and empathy training across all levels of staff, from tellers to executives. This includes immersive simulations, real-time role-play, and evaluations from external civil rights experts. She clicked the slide behind her. Images of training centers, hands-on workshops, and staff in dialogue filled the screen. Second, we are creating an anonymous audit system, using mystery customers from diverse backgrounds to report on service quality, delays, tone, and fairness. These audits will be tied to quarterly branch evaluations and bonuses. Some board members shifted uncomfortably. Angela continued unfazed. Third, we are publicly disaggregating customer satisfaction data by race, gender, and language, and publishing it biannually. Because what gets measured gets improved. And what stays hidden stays rotten. A few heads nodded in the audience, slowly, thoughtfully. Then more. Fourth, we are forming a client equity advisory board, composed not of bankers or executives, but of the very people our system has failed. She turned and extended a hand. From the front row, a tall black man in a charcoal blazer stood up. His name was Michael Mandel, a small business owner whose 3 loan applications had been rejected despite spotless credit and impeccable projections. Next to him rose Elena Rodriguez, a Latina woman whose financial success had been quietly dismissed by concerned advisors who suggested less risky options she hadn't asked for. Then came James Chen, a quiet, bespectacled man who had once tried to open a business account, only to be told he needed 2 forms of proof of address, while the white client next to him only needed 1. They weren't actors. They weren't tokens. They were witnesses, and now, decision makers. Angela stepped aside to let them take the spotlight. These individuals, she said, will guide our leadership on policy. They will sit in quarterly meetings. They will have access to data, to complaints, to real power. They are not here for decoration. They are here for direction. There was a long silence. Cameras clicked softly. Pens moved furiously. A few reporters nodded slowly, then raised their hands. Is this about optics? One asked. Damage control? Angela looked directly at her. No, she said. This is about honor. This is about owning what we ignored, and fixing what we broke. She paused. Damage control is a press release. This is a culture transplant. Another hand rose. How did the board react to your proposal? Angela didn't smile. She didn't soften the truth. Some resisted. Some feared backlash. But I showed them the data, the footage, and the future we would be endorsing if we stayed silent. The reporters looked toward the board members standing behind her. None spoke. They didn't need to. Their presence, their silence, it told the truth. Angela leaned in slightly. Let me be very clear, she said, her voice like a clean blade. This initiative isn't about guilt. It's about growth. It's about building a financial institution where respect is not a reward, it's a right. A standing ovation didn't erupt. Instead, something rarer happened. People stood slowly. Not out of applause, but out of recognition. They saw in her not just a leader, but a mirror. The mirror of what they had hoped their country, their corporations, and their communities could become: accountable, brave, and human. Angela stepped down from the podium and walked to the edge of the stage. A little girl in the front row, maybe 9 or 10, held her mother's hand and whispered, "She looks like me." Angela heard it. And smiled. This wasn't just policy. It was a legacy. The press conference had ended, but for Angela Freeman, the real work was just beginning. As camera crews packed their equipment and reporters filed stories destined for headlines across the country, Angela sat alone in her corner office on the 21st floor of Meridian Financial Headquarters, a cup of coffee slowly cooling in her hand. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt responsible. Beneath the polished mahogany of her desk lay 3 thick folders, each one marked not with corporate labels, but with handwritten notes. Pain points, customers. Pain points, employees. Systemic failures. She had spent the night before the press conference reviewing every complaint ever logged, formal and informal, by customers of color, women, immigrants, and working-class folks. Some patterns made her stomach tighten: delays in service, denials without explanation, and different documentation requirements based on skin tone and language. But what hit hardest were the margins, the scribbled notes from employees who had seen these patterns and didn't know what to do. Now, Angela knew. And she was going to do it. By Monday morning, every single branch of Meridian Financial, over 300 across the country, had received a package marked Priority Reform Initiative, CEO mandated. Inside each package were 3 things. 1. A sealed memo from Angela Freeman herself, printed, signed, and dated. 2. A detailed protocol for branch reevaluation. 3. A poster-sized sign to be placed prominently near every teller window. The sign read, "All customers deserve respect, dignity, and fair service. If your experience does not reflect these values, call this number, 312-555-0461. Angela Freeman, CEO." It was her direct office line. No gatekeepers. No redirects. Straight to the top. Some branch managers scoffed at first. "She won't answer that phone," one said in Topeka. Another in New Orleans laughed, "She'll turn it off in a week." They were wrong. By the end of that week, Angela had personally returned 86 calls. Not just listening, but documenting, cross-referencing, and following up with compliance officers and regional heads. And the branches? They were changing. At the Detroit branch, a young Latina woman named Maria Alvarez, previously overlooked for promotions, was named interim manager. The reason? Her exemplary record of equitable service. Her customer surveys, when disaggregated by race, showed the lowest disparity in satisfaction rates between white and minority clients in the entire region. In Salt Lake City, Angela replaced a manager whose loan approvals for black business owners were just 11%, compared to a company average of 42%. Within a month, under new leadership and revised criteria, approval rates jumped without any increase in defaults. In Charlotte, she brought in the Human Rights Commission to co-lead empathy training sessions, where tellers sat across from actors reenacting real discriminatory interactions and were asked not just to respond, but to feel. It wasn't comfortable. It wasn't supposed to be. At headquarters, new KPIs were issued for all executive staff. No longer could bonuses be justified solely by profitability or volume. Now, equity metrics make up 40% of every executive bonus evaluation. It was radical, controversial, and non-negotiable. Performance reviews are now included. Customer satisfaction disaggregated by race, gender, and income level. Internal diversity in team hiring and promotions. Complaints escalated and resolved by demographic. Community engagement hours volunteered in underserved neighborhoods. One regional VP resigned immediately. Another threatened legal action, claiming reverse discrimination. Angela didn't blink. She replaced them both with candidates who not only met the new standards but also believed in them. Meanwhile, inside the branches, the change was palpable. The new signs on the walls weren't just decoration. Customers began referencing them, sometimes nervously, sometimes defiantly. One older black veteran in Pittsburgh pointed to the sign after a teller asked him for a second ID that others in line hadn't been asked for. "Can I speak to Ms. Freeman?" he asked, his voice steady. The teller paled. But she didn't call the manager. She called Angela. And Angela picked up. "Sir," she said warmly, "thank you for trusting us enough to point this out. I promise you will make this right." The branch was audited the next day. At staff training retreats, a new ritual emerged, the Freeman call. Each employee was given a scenario from real customer complaints and asked to imagine Angela was on the line, listening. How would you explain your actions? Why did you treat that customer differently? What would you do now? It was awkward. Emotional. Transformative. Back at corporate, Angela's office began to fill with thank you letters. Not just from customers, but from employees. One came from a junior teller in Phoenix who wrote, "I used to watch it happen. Watch how they treated the immigrant families, how they whispered when someone came in who spoke broken English. I didn't say anything. I didn't think I had power. Now I feel like I do." Another came from a mother of two in Chicago. "My loan was denied 3 times until you changed the system. Last week I opened my business. The sign above my door says, funded by Meridian Financial. But in my heart, it says, funded by justice." Angela read each one. Kept them. And replied. 6 months into the reforms, the board gathered again, this time not in a damage control meeting, but in a strategy summit to expand the initiative further. Angela stood before them, a new report in hand. "We've seen a 19% increase in minority customer retention," she began. "Loan approval gaps have narrowed by 60%. Internal promotions among underrepresented groups are up 42%. But more than that, we're earning something you can't buy. Trust." The room was quiet. Then Catherine Reynolds, the board member who had once questioned whether clients would feel comfortable with a black CEO, slowly stood. "I was wrong," she said plainly. "This isn't just reform. It's a revolution." Outside the building, at a downtown branch in Atlanta, a young black girl stood in line with her father. She clutched a piggy bank under her arm. Above the teller's head, the new Meridian poster caught her eye. She nudged her father. "Daddy, it says I can call the boss if they treat me badly." He smiled. "They won't, baby. Not anymore." And somewhere on the 21st floor, Angela Freeman picked up another call. Angela Freeman stepped out of the cab and looked up at the modest brick building in front of her. It had been nearly a year since the storm at the downtown branch, since the day the bank she had dedicated her life to had tried to humiliate her for withdrawing her own money. But today was different. She wasn't undercover. She wasn't here to expose. She was here to observe. And to hope. Angela wore the same navy blue hoodie from that unforgettable day. The same dark slacks. The same no-brand purse. Her hair, again, was pulled into a simple low bun. No press team followed her. No name tag identified her rank. To every passerby on this warm spring morning, she was just another customer walking into a bank. And that's exactly how she wanted it. This was her third unannounced branch visit in as many weeks, a quiet initiative she'd begun after the reforms had rolled out nationwide. Not to catch anyone in wrongdoing, but to see if what they had planted had truly taken root. She stepped through the glass doors of Meridian Financial, branch number 204, located in a diverse neighborhood just outside Baltimore. The bell above the door gave a soft chime. A young black woman behind the welcome desk looked up immediately and smiled. "Good morning, ma'am," she said brightly. "Welcome to Meridian. How can I assist you today?" Angela smiled softly. "I'm just here to make a withdrawal." "Absolutely," the young woman said. "Right this way. I'll walk you to a teller." That was new. No hesitation. No skeptical look. No delay. Angela glanced around the branch as they walked. The walls bore the new equity posters she had personally approved. There was a kids' corner in the lobby, stocked with books in Spanish, Vietnamese, and English. And behind every teller window, a sign, "If you don't feel respected, call the CEO." Angela's direct line. Still there. Still active. Still answered. She reached teller window 3, where a middle-aged white man greeted her with a friendly smile. "Good morning. What can I do for you?" "I'd like to make a withdrawal," she said, sliding her ID and account number. "No problem." He scanned her ID, then looked up. "Angela Freeman," he said thoughtfully. "I've heard that name before." She raised an eyebrow, amused. He chuckled. "Our CEO. Same name. Have you ever gotten mistaken for her?" Angela laughed, a sound that hadn't come easily during the darker days. "Once or twice." The teller nodded. "Well, Ms. Freeman, I've got your account pulled up. Looks like everything's in order. How much would you like to withdraw today?" "100,000, she replied calmly. The teller didn't flinch. He didn't call a supervisor. Didn't ask for extra ID. Didn't mutter about suspicious activity. He just said, "All right. That's a large amount, so I'll need to get manager approval. Give me one moment." "Of course," Angela said. 2 minutes later, a manager appeared, Latina, early 30s, confident. She verified Angela's information with a smile and a quiet, "We appreciate your business," then disappeared to prepare the cash. Angela waited in a sunlit corner of the lobby. A young Asian couple walked in and were greeted in their language by a multilingual staff member. An elderly black veteran walked up to a teller and was helped patiently as he searched for his documents. It was peaceful, efficient, human. She looked up at the security cameras. Still there. Still recording. But this time, not capturing injustice. Just normalcy. The way things were always supposed to be. 10 minutes later, the manager returned with a locked case. "We've got your withdrawal here, Ms. Freeman. Would you like a private room to count it, or would you prefer we do it at the window?" Angela smiled. "A private room would be great. Thank you." In the counting room, the manager set the cash on the table and began the process. "You're our largest withdrawal this week," she said cheerfully. "We don't see too many six-figure visits in person these days." Angela gave a non-committal smile. The manager paused. "I hope you don't mind me saying. I've worked here for 7 years. It's different now. Since the changes." Angela's eyebrows lifted. "Different how?" The manager sat down across from her, lowering her voice just slightly. "We notice things. Customers talk. Before, I think a lot of us assumed bias only happened elsewhere. The news. Other banks. But then we started doing those trainings. Watching those videos. Hearing people's stories." She hesitated. "I used to be afraid to speak up when I saw unfair treatment. Now, we're empowered to say something. Even to report it anonymously if needed. And it's not just about race, it's about respect. For everyone." Angela's throat tightened slightly. "You don't have to say anything," the manager added quickly. "I just thought you should know. The culture is shifting." Angela leaned forward. "And how are customers reacting?" "They're noticing too. Trust is up. Fewer complaints. We've even seen customers who left come back." Angela nodded. "That's good to hear." As the manager finished counting, she smiled again. "By the way, you do look like our CEO. It's uncanny." Angela grinned. "I get that a lot." As she stepped outside into the morning air, Angela paused on the sidewalk and looked back at the building. Not perfect. Not utopia. But better. Inside those walls, change was happening. Not because of fear or discipline, but because people believed it mattered. Because they had seen what injustice looked like, and what courage looked like, too. Angela pulled out her phone and opened a document titled, Final Phase, Equity Roadmap. It was time to move to the next chapter, embedding these values in the tech systems, in the hiring pipelines, in community lending. She was about to summon a car when a teenage girl passed by on her bike, did a double take, then slowed to a stop. "Hey," the girl said, squinting. "Are you Angela Freeman?" Angela blinked. "Why do you ask?" The girl grinned. "We watched your press conference in school. My mom banks at Meridian. She told me you changed everything." Angela smiled. "Tell your mom I said thank you." The girl nodded, then paused. "I want to be like you someday." Angela knelt slightly, meeting her eyes. "Then start by treating people right. Especially the ones no one else sees." The girl nodded solemnly, then pedaled off into the distance. Angela stood up, heart full. It was a new day at Meridian Financial. And for the first time in a long time, the system felt like it was worth believing in. The story of Angela Freeman delivers a powerful lesson. True leadership isn't just about title or position, it's about integrity, courage, and using your influence to create lasting change. Angela didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her quiet strength, unwavering composure, and belief in justice dismantled an entire culture of discrimination within her institution. For anyone between 18 to 40 navigating workplaces, systems, or spaces that overlook or undervalue them, this story is a reminder that your worth isn't defined by others' assumptions, it's proven through how you carry yourself, especially under pressure. When faced with injustice, it's easy to react emotionally. But sometimes, the most powerful response is to let the truth speak for itself, and to ensure it is witnessed. Angela used evidence, not ego. She didn't just stand up for herself, she restructured the system so that others wouldn't suffer the same indignity. The takeaway: dignity is not silence, and change doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it walks into a room calmly, and rewrites the rules.